there's a lot of good and bad memories that are made inside that arena.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I mean, it molded me growing up. So I know it's going to mold my children growing up.
Absolutely.
And so I just thought, okay, what better place but in the arena, you know, because this is where we spend most of our time, and that's kind of like my sanctuary. And you know, if I had days where I felt kind of yucky, like, that barn is where I would be, you know.
That's your church.
Yes.
I mean, it's...
Yes.
Yeah, back of a horse.
Hey y'all, and welcome. You're listening to the Cowgirl Confessions podcast. I'm your host, Dakota Dawn Johnson, small town cowgirl with southern roots, blazing a trail as a Midwest ranch wife, mama, and businesswoman. The mission of Cowgirl Confessions is to share the wonderfully wild and western life stories of cowgirls from all walks of life. We'll talk about the highs, the lows, and everything in between when it comes to navigating careers, cowboys, kids, and cattle. Legendary cowgirl Dale Evans said it best: "Cowgirl is a pioneer spirit, a special brand of American courage. The cowgirl faces life head on, lives by her own lights, and makes no excuses. Cowgirls take stands. They speak up. They defend the things they hold dear. A cowgirl might be a rancher, a barrel racer, a bull rider, or an actress, but she's just as likely to be a checker at the local Winn-Dixie, a full-time mother, a banker, an attorney, or an astronaut. If you're into wet saddle blankets, talks with God, buckets full of laughter, and the life lessons learned in the process, kick off your boots and settle in. I pray these stories encourage, empower, and give you just the leg up you need. Here's to embracing the cowgirl state of mind, no matter how wild and western life may get along the way."
Hey friend, welcome to another episode of the Cowgirl Confessions podcast. I'm currently sitting in my SUV with one of my dearest friends. We met back whenever we were in college rodeoing, and sitting in the car is the most quiet space for us at this point. The kids are asleep, all five of them.
Yes.
And so I want to introduce you guys today, friend Lacey Kelley, and that's not a joke. That's her real name.
No.
So Kelly, thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So let's just kick it off here with easy intro, because I promised Kelly this was not going to be hard. You know, it's like, just people need to hear your story. So let's start back with how you got started in the horse business.
Well, my first horse, his name was Scarface. My parents took me to my first horse show when I was 2, and I ran the barrels and poles. He was a big bay thoroughbred cross. Who knows? He was a Heinz 57. But he was wonderful. My parents actually bought him when he was about a yearling, and the people that they bought him from had left the weanling halter on him. So, needless to say, he was about starved to death. It had grown into his face and his skull. So whenever they had to cut the halter off and they ripped it off of his face, it left a big scar across his face, which is how he got his name. But he, I don't know how many years I rode him. We ended up putting him down when I was probably in junior high.
Okay.
So obviously, my dad and mom had rode him for years before we ever got started on him and stuff. But he was just one of those good ones. He was uglier than homemade sin, but he was wonderful. So.
Oh, and earlier when you were talking about how you made him friendship bracelets, that tugged at my heartstrings right there.
He was my best friend growing up. I would, tie together these ropes and braid them and tie him to his ankles, or tie him around his ankles, and my dad would be like, "You can't make him that long because they're going to trip him." And so they'd have to be short little bracelets. But he was literally my best friend growing up.
Every little girl deserves, that one horse. Yes. And every horse deserves that one, little girl. But Okay, so you got started with Scarface.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about where, you're from Illinois, but what it was like growing up in that state and just all the different kind of experiences you had growing up with horses there.
So we started just going to horse shows. My sister was into pleasure, so it was just at all the little local saddle clubs. They would start out with the pleasure classes, and then they would, end the night with speed classes. So when I tell you we had to get up early, my mom, she would wash and bathe and braid and band, and she would just like go over the top with my sister's beautiful pleasure horses. And then here was Scarface. And, I would try to make him look so pretty like my sister's pleasure horses, but it just never worked for him. But we finally, I started Illinois Junior Rodeo when I was in the 5th grade, and we had just started, running barrels and poles. We entered the goat tying at our first one. Had no clue how to tie a goat.
Same.
So,
entered that, and I literally tied the goat. You want the goat with his back, to you.
Yes.
And his legs in front. My first junior rodeo, I managed to tie 3 feet and it not get up with his feet facing me and his back. No joke. And I remember somebody coming and telling my mom, it doesn't matter that it took her 45 seconds to tie that goat. The fact that it didn't get up and she did it that backwards, I think she's got a lot of potential.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm right there with you.
But, someone at our first junior rodeo was like, here, let me give you some lessons. I think they noticed how we had no clue. And we took a stock trailer to our first junior rodeo with a mattress up in the front.
Nice.
And, that was... We all 4 slept up there. Didn't have a living quarters trailer. And, those are the best memories of my life. Mm-hmm. Just, looking back now, I'm like, oh my gosh, I would not ever want to have to take a stock trailer with a mattress in the front and sleep with no air conditioning.
Right.
But, it was so much fun, and we didn't know any other way. So, it was fine.
Yeah. It's, and I'm so grateful that I think that's part of what makes you so special, and I just love that about you. All of this led up to you, going on to rodeo and college rodeo, and, it's how we met, is you going to school at West Alabama, and I went there my freshman year, and it's just like, you were so approachable in that, you came from good stock, and but I came up very similar in that way with those experiences. We didn't roll up with a living quarters trailer, we just kind of gradually moved into stuff and did the best we can with some dinks. Yes. Some absolute dinks. And whenever I got to ride your horse Silver, you let me mount out on him at some of the college rodeos in the breakaway. It was literally the first time I'd sat on a breakaway horse that I was like, this is this is the kind of horse, really an athlete, what I want, not just something to get by on.
Right.
And so, let's talk a little more about how you went from, kind of junior rodeo, and then what kind of propelled you and made you even want to move south from Illinois to go to college.
Let's see, I probably started roping maybe in the 7th or 8th grade. And it was the same deal. I spent less than $1,000 on Silver. My dad bought him as a trading horse. We were going to buy him and resell him. And of course I fell in love with him. And so his nickname was the Man Killer.
Oh,
because
gosh.
He had kicked down a barn. He supposedly would come after, these men would go out to the pasture to catch him, and he would come at them with his ears laid back, charging like a bull. And so whenever my dad bought him, these people were like, whatever you do, don't let your daughters get close to this horse. Do not let your daughters ride this horse. And so my dad rode him a few times, and he said, there's nothing wrong with this horse. And so I started riding him. And of course, I was in the 7th grade. I fell in love with him. And my dad told me, he was like, we're not keeping him. We bought him to resell. So if you want to buy him, you take the money out of your savings account and you can buy him. And I said, well, take it out. I was like, I want this horse. And I don't know what it was, but there was just something about him. And we had such an amazing bond. I mean, I taught him voice commands, you know, just because that was like my next best friend, you know, and it's not that I didn't have friends in school. I played sports all through school. You know, I played basketball and ran track all in high school. Like, I was very athletic and I had friends, but man, those horses will get you through some of the toughest times in your life. And, I'm so grateful that I've had them, you know, to help me through everything. So yeah, long story short, fast forward, Silver turned out to be amazing. And, he got me through high school rodeo, great breakaway horse. And I had went to what is it called? The Georgia, the Perry, Georgia rodeo.
The Southeastern Showdown deal?
Yes. So I was actually the National High School Rodeo president. So I got invited to come down there. So we went down there, and I had done pretty well in the breakaway, and the scout was down, or Jason was down there scouting. And so he approached me there, and I knew that I wanted to go south. Like, I was so sick of busting ice. I could not stand it.
Yep.
So I had told my parents, whatever I do, like, I'm going south. And my sister had actually went to Oklahoma, and I was like, it's still cold in Oklahoma. I don't want to go to Oklahoma. So anyway, that was kind of, you know, my main factor is I just wanted to go south where it was warm.
I'm so glad you did, like, high humidity and sweet tea.
Right.
I mean, you know, it had you. Like,
yes.
Come south.
Yep. So, went down there freshman year. Oh my gosh, I was so homesick. My dad, I think, told my mom she couldn't call me anymore because she, you know, had, the empty nest syndrome. My sister had left the year before, and then I had left, you know, the following year. So she spent so many years hauling us and traveling with us that she struggled really bad with not having, you know, anyone in the house, nothing to do on the weekends, because that was her life. And I just wanted to come home so bad. And my dad, you know, he always told me, he's like, just go get that piece of paper, and if you still want to come home and ride colts, then that's fine. That's what you can do. So I thought, okay, I'm going to get a real degree. Like, I'm not going to take any shortcuts. So went and got a bachelor's in science with an emphasis in chemistry. And so I worked in the medical field for a couple years, and an opportunity came up for my parents to buy a bigger farm. And they, you know, we had always trained thoroughbreds, but it was a much smaller scale. So that was the deal. If they bought this farm, then Luke and I would move back home. And so I'm like, I'm in, let's go. Yeah. That was what I wanted to do from a long time ago. So that was kind of that whole fast forward, you know, over that 10-year span or whatever. But,
so it's so unique because you just throw it in there, like, and for our listeners, you know, just because you have a horse show rodeo background, not everybody has that racehorse thoroughbred background.
Right.
But I think that's what's made you just such a hand with a horse, and just your knowledge from seeing so much on that side of the industry, because it's different.
Oh, it's a whole different world.
It's a whole different world. So I just think you bring so much to the table, and really, like, your cowgirl state of mind has been influenced by seeing so much of that.
I'm sure. Yes.
And how to take care of horses, you know, like, if I was to die and come back as a horse, I would want to come back as yours. Because I know that, like, man, there's nowhere else better that I'm going to get taken care of than, you know, with Kelly.
Yes. That has a lot of pros and cons with it. Don't ask Luke, my
dollar
husband.
signs.
Yes, don't ask Luke, my husband, about that. But, you know, horses have always been my top priority. So I don't care if it's mine or if it's yours, or, you know, if it's someone. Some of our clients don't even know they could walk through our barn, and they don't even know what horse is theirs, you know? Mm-hmm. And that is sometimes heartbreaking, you know?
Sure.
But I know that they get loved while they're there and while they're with us. And then, you know, I hope that they go on to do great things on the racetrack, and, you know, we'll get a win picture every once in a while. So that makes you feel better. But, yeah, it's a different world. It really is.
So obviously you can't go that fast or train horses to go fast without there being some bumps in the road or some wrecks. So,
yes.
So do you have anything you can share with us today? Just like some hard lessons learned that you're like, not going to do that again, or, oh, that's one I won't ever forget.
So a couple stick out. There was, and this is not even a thoroughbred. This was a barrel horse that I had got in, and they could not get her to free up and run. And they were like, she makes the prettiest turns, but she just won't run. So would you care to take her, haul her some barrel races, maybe blow her out on the track? And I was like, yeah, sure, that's fine. She was a super sweet mare. And when you are on a racetrack, there's not a gate that you open and shut like an arena. Mm-hmm. It's just what we call a gap. So there's this gap, open gap all the time. And so I had blown her out down one stretch and then pulled her up and just kind of jogged her around, the turn. And I thought, man, she didn't fire at all down the first stretch. So we came to the next stretch, and she kind of started, and then I could tell that like her head perked up and her ears perked up, and she was looking at the barn, and then she started firing. And I was like, oh dear Lord, I know exactly what she's looking at. And we were on the far side of the track, so I mean, we're half mile away from the barn, but I'm like, she has that barn zeroed in. So I had started like trying to kind of check her up. There was nothing there. So we make it around the turn. I'm trying to get her to like keep going around the turn, but I could tell that she was going to duck out of that gap. And me being my hard-headed self, I was, dead set. She is not going to get away with this. So I was going to ride her through it. Well, I rode her through it all the way to the barn. And then when she hit the concrete, like hallway going into the barn, she of course wiped out and crushed my leg.
Oh, Kelly.
So it was just my ankle that was crushed, and it was crushed in so many different pieces they couldn't even pin it together. So I had a cast from my hip all the way to my foot for 3 months, and then they made it a smaller cast after that.
Oh my gosh.
But they didn't want me moving, the upper part of my leg at all, because I would move the ligaments would move those little bone pieces and stuff. So that was one. And then the other one, I was on a really spooky thoroughbred, and he was doing great. And all of a sudden I felt like a pop, and I was like, oh gosh, what was that? And I'm still sitting in the middle of him. And I kind of looked down at his feet, because I was just like, he didn't stumble. He didn't feel like it was a pop like from him. And I see my girt flying out to the side, and it's just flapping underneath him.
Talk about staying centered.
And I'm like, oh gosh. And so we were coming up on the turn, and I'm like, oh gosh, how am I going to do this? Because I kind of like tried to sit down, and like, okay, buddy, let's slow it down. Mm-hmm. Well, then my saddle started inching up on his neck. And so of course that made him, even more nervous. And so he started getting faster, and then we were coming around the turn, and I'm like, buddy, you got to slow down. He didn't. So finally I just said, I'm out, and jumped off. And I hit like a sack of crap. But a lot of times you can I use my goat tying skills. If I need to step off, I just step off,
Right.
And that has helped me a lot. But when you don't have a saddle that's attached to them,
sure,
it just
that's
slides,
a problem.
and you just fall, and it's horrible.
Wow. You got back on. I mean,
Yeah.
But that's intense. The cast, like from the waist down, man.
Yeah, it was bad. Luckily, I had a friend that had a motorized wheelchair.
Oh, nice.
So she let me borrow it, so I was still like able to go out to the barn, and I'd put horses on the walker in this wheelchair, because obviously I couldn't do that with crutches.
Right.
But
where there's a will, there's a way.
That is right. Yes.
Oh my gosh. Well, and that, that's a perfect segue to where we're going to go next. Because, where there's a will, there's a way. And I feel like you are, one of the strongest people that I know, cowgirl state of mind through and through. And
every once in a while when I meet somebody new, they'll say, Dakota, where are you from? And I love having the opportunity to say, I grew up in a small town in rural Alabama. Now, whether you have small town roots or dream of one day trading in the city life for a little slower pace, or maybe you just enjoy an occasional weekend getaway, where you can actually see the stars at night. Whatever your version of living the small town life looks like, my friends at thesmalltownlife.com, they have you covered with comfortable and unique ball caps and graphic tees that the entire family will love. Be sure to go follow them on Instagram and Facebook and use the hashtag #TheSmallTownLife when you're out there doing the small town living.
I'm going to take us back a few years. So I came to you and was down on my luck. Just thought, it was the end of the world. I'd went through like a really bad breakup. Mm-hmm. I was on the road. I was traveling, and you were like, you know what, just come to hang out with me for the weekend. And I did. And I'm so grateful for that, because I just needed time, like this weekend, yes. You being here. Kelly is here at our home this weekend. Her and her family came to visit us, and there's nothing like, when you just have that friend that you can just spend time with. Time is such a gift. And so anyway, I was sitting at Kelly's, your kitchen table, and we were just talking, and I didn't remember telling you this until I got something in the mail from you. So I'm going to fast forward that a couple of years after, it wasn't even 2 years. It was a little over a year after I had sat at Kelly's kitchen table and shared, just some things about growing up and stuff, and shared this story with her. My mom passed away unexpectedly, and Kelly called me, and said, hey, do you want me to come to the funeral, or do you want me to come in a couple of weeks? Like, you tell me, when you want me to come, because I was in Alabama, she was back in Illinois. And I said, come in a couple of weeks. I said, when everything has kind of died down and everybody else has went on with their life, I know I'm going to need you. And she's like, okay. So that's when I thought I would, see Kelly. And a couple of days later, I got a box in the mail. And that box had the sweetest card, but the first thing that I saw when I opened it, the card said, I saw the card before I saw what was in it, and I'll never forget, she said, I know you're not supposed to ship this, because they tell you at the post office not to ship things that are like, aerosol can or whatever. So if you're with the U.S. Postal Service, we know that we weren't supposed to do this, but we hadn't done it just once. We've done it a few times at this point. She shipped me a bottle of shaving cream with a note wrapped around it. And I'm going to let you tell the next part, why you shipped that bottle of shaving cream.
Okay. So I don't even remember what I wrote on there, but the shaving cream, I just remember the story that, you were telling about when you were growing up. Your mom had worked very hard to try to do everything, and it's just, things were tough, I mean, it was hard to make ends meet. And there was this one day that you got in the shower and you saw a bottle of shaving cream, and just the way that you explained it, as far as the way it made you feel, like everything is going to be okay, things are looking up, we're going to get through this. And as a family, like, just, I don't know, I couldn't imagine with your mom and your brothers and, everything that you guys had struggled with growing up, and then that feeling of, that was just kind of your relief.
Yeah. And I'll never forget that. And I'd never told anybody that story but you. That's what's so wild. It's like whenever I, opened the box and I saw the shaving cream and you had wrapped, I still have the bottle of shaving cream, if anybody's wondering. And that's been like 7, almost 8 years ago. I just, when you sit down and you start having those no longer surface level conversations with your friends, you're talking about your childhood, you're talking about the things that have molded you into who you are, you're talking about the things that you want to become, as well as what you don't want to become. Like you're aware of some of the things you've walked through and seen and what you don't want to do. And so, it was in one of those conversations when I shared that, I was like, I just remember, like, we were on such a duct tape budget, like putting it together with baling wire and hay string, that it was like this, like a bottle of shaving cream was not a necessity. It's like, exactly. you can shave your legs with some White Rain conditioner from Dollar General, yes. Like it wasn't a necessity. It was an extra. And when I just remember like seeing that in the shower, and I was like, things are getting better, like it gave me some hope that like it was going to like relieve my mom of some stress. And that meant a lot to me, watching her, because it was a struggle there. It was always like, I just feel like I watched financial burden, most of the time growing up. But, you can walk through that and it doesn't have to define you. And
Exactly.
So anyway, I forgot I ever even told you that story until I get this bottle of shaving cream from you, and it made me laugh and it made me cry and it gave me hope. Just like you wrote, you're like, I hope this gives you, it reminds you that like there are going to be, you're in a spot that's tough, but like there's hope. I hope that's what this will remind you of. And like I said, I still have the bottle of shaving cream, and I never thought that, I would need to send you a bottle.
Right.
But here we are. And when it comes to showing up for a friend, just like when you called me that time, it was like, you weren't going to be able to make 2 trips right then, to Alabama. So you asked me to choose. And whenever I got, when I found out, that you have cancer.
Right.
And I just was like, I can't get there. You get news like that and you're like, I can't get there fast enough. But then also knowing that that's not necessarily what your friend needs right then.
Right.
Like they need you, but how do you show up for somebody in the middle of that?
Yeah.
And so I sent a bottle of shaving cream.
Oh, and I cried. And my daughter, who's 10, she had no clue, and she was just like, why are you crying over that? Like, what is that? Why are you crying? And I said, I hope someday that you will have friends that know you inside and out and that are going to be there for you. And I was like, this is something that goes many, many years back. And I was like, it means so much to me. And, it's one of those things that you can't really explain. But whenever you have those true blue friends, it means the world.
It does. It absolutely does. And, for any of our listeners out there that are, that you just feel like stuff is so heavy right now, you don't know how you are going to get through it. I hope that by Kelly, sharing her story and what she's walking through right now, that it will really encourage you and give you hope too, because it's definitely inspired me, in more ways than one, because when you hear that, the C word, the dreaded C word that none of us want to hear about anybody, it's like, Lord, that's enough. That in itself is enough. God doesn't make mistakes, and we know that. And Kelly has just been so good about sharing this story and just how much it's covered in faith, because there's been a lot more going on than just cancer. And I don't want to say it in it's just cancer, because it's never just. I'd love for you to share just kind of how this started, because it truly is. You can see God's hand in it everywhere.
Oh, you can. Are we on a time limit?
No, I think we're good.
Okay.
We're good.
Okay. So
you guys push pause if you got something to do and come back, because this is, you don't want to miss. This is a great episode. I'm just telling you. So, yeah.
When it comes to navigating careers, cowboys, kids, and cattle, it can feel lonely sometimes, like you're down in the trenches trying to do all the things. But I want to share with you that it doesn't have to feel that way. I joined the Cowgirls Over Coffee membership in May of 2020. And y'all, it has been such a gift. It has allowed me to connect with women with that Western and rural background that simply get it. They understand what I'm working with. We get to share strategies, encouragement, and hold each other accountable as we're pursuing goals in all of these different areas of life. To learn more, visit cowgirlsovercoffee.com or check out episode 45 of the Cowgirl Confessions podcast that features the founder of Cowgirls Over Coffee, Thea Larson. I hope to see you there.
So I felt, I'll start kind of from the beginning. maybe I should even back it up more. My husband was a professional bull rider. He had done pretty well, and long story short, was supposed to be on this TV show, and so he made the final cut. And part of the final cut was they had to go through these physicals. So they did these MRIs, and they found that he had aneurysms, and brain aneurysms. So after he left California, he was headed to Brazil for 3 weeks to ride bulls. And I mean, he had this whole big trip planned. And so that was a very stressful time. Just because if he got hit in the head, then one of these aneurysms would probably bust. But long story short, so he had his first aneurysm operation in 2012. We had that operation on Friday, and I went into labor on Monday. And so that was a very stressful time, simply because he wasn't working at the time. I had just had a baby. I didn't know, how this whole surgery was going to play out. And, that first baby is stressful.
No
stress
doubt.
out everything.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I just remember thinking, like, if we can make it through this, we'll make it through anything. Like, just, if we can make it through this scene, like, we will make it through anything. So this past November, I guess it would be like November 2021, I was sitting on the couch. We were all sitting there, and I kind of felt like a pain. And I said, what is that? And it was a lump in my breast. And so I called my OBGYN. They got COVID, so then my appointment got pushed back even farther. So on January 3rd, which was my 37th birthday, I went for my first mammogram. And she, had told me, I don't really think it's anything, but just to be safe, you're not 40, you're not supposed to have mammograms every year, but just to be safe, let's go check it out. So I did that there at our local hometown hospital, and they said, well, we would kind of like to take a biopsy, whenever is convenient for you. So I thought, okay, no big deal, that's fine. They didn't lead me to believe that it was anything too terribly serious. Well, the very next day, which would be January 4th, I was at work, and Luke called me, and he said, I need you to come get me and get me to St. Louis as soon as possible. Something's wrong with my head. So this was on a Tuesday. My dad's supposed to be gone every Tuesday. I normally have the racehorse farm by myself on those days. And it just so happened for the first time in probably 5 or 6 years that he didn't have to be gone on a Tuesday. So he was there, and I said, look, I don't know what's going on. I did not think it was that big of a deal. He sounded okay on the phone. So I said, he wants to go to, St. Louis, so can you keep the kids? And of course he said yes. And so I'm driving home. We had been to a 3-day barrel race in Memphis the weekend before, so I still had my trailer hooked on, and get home, which is a good 45-minute drive back to our house. And I'm trying to unhook the trailer. The generator's in the back of the truck. Of course, this is January 4th in Illinois. It's cold. And I'm trying to jerk the generator out. And luckily, I still had a bag packed, I think, from the weekend. So I just threw that in the truck. And didn't have enough diesel to get to St. Louis. So we stopped and had to get diesel. And I'm trying to drive fast over there. By the time we get to St. Louis, which is a little over 2 hours from our house, he's puking. He's in so much pain. Like, he really cannot talk to me that well anymore. And I pull in at the ER entrance and, walk with him over there. And the guards, these two very big men, they tell me that they are at max capacity, that I'm not allowed to go in. And so my heart just sank. And I'm like, you don't understand. He cannot communicate. He cannot tell you what's going on. Just please let me go get him checked in, and I promise I will leave. And
I can't even imagine what that. Oh my gosh, Kelly.
And he was literally like he was squatting down in the floor and had like his head between his legs. You know, he was in so much pain. And so finally this one gentleman said, "You can go talk to that receptionist right there and you come straight back." And I was like, yes sir, I will. You know, just please let me go. So I walk over to her desk, and it was this beautiful blonde, you know, younger girl, and she looked extremely exhausted and overworked. And literally, I mean, like, when I think of her, it's just like she was an angel. I walked up to her desk and I said, "Look," I said, "my husband is, you know, having really bad headache. He's puking. He can't communicate. I need to have him looked at as soon as possible." And she just looked at me and her eyes got big and she said, "You guys come on to the back." And now let me tell you, to get to her desk, which it's a huge waiting room, but I'm literally stepping over people laying in the floor because of COVID. And like, I mean, it is just, it's like a war scene. It was crazy. So they put him in a wheelchair and take him to the back. And I said, "Well, I've got to go move my truck because I'm blocking the entrance. I'll be back." And my truck wouldn't fit in the garage, of course. So I'm trying to find a place to park this dually truck in St. Louis, which is a nightmare. And when I go back in there, they'd already done the CT scan and they'd found bleeding on the brain. So later that evening, nobody could come over with me because of COVID. So you can only have one person with you. So I'm there by myself at the hospital, and they took him back later that evening to do an angiogram, which is like where you go up through the groin and you go look at the brain. So they tell me, "Okay, we found the problem. One of the aneurysms that they fixed before with the coil has a bulge on the backside. So we can, since, you know, he's out, we're in there with the angiogram, we can recoil it now. Or we can, you know, take that out, and tomorrow we can schedule a full cranial surgery to put a clip in." So I'm like, okay, what does that mean, you know? And so my gut feeling was just, you know, we've already done the coils, like we've already went down that path. So here we are again, and now we have a serious problem. You know, before, the aneurysms had never caused a problem. He didn't even know he had them, you know. It was just a blessing in disguise that they were discovered. And so now we've got this one that's leaking. And so luckily I have a very, very good Christian friend that she's also a PA. So I called her and, you know, just told her, I said, "Leslie, I want you to be on speakerphone and I want you to hear these options, and I need your help." Mm-hmm. And at that time, you know, I'd called her on the way over there just to kind of give her a heads up, and she was like, "You're going to the right place, you know, just make sure you get in there." And so she listened to the options, and of course she wasn't going to say, you know, she was not going to be the one to say, "This is what you need to do," because it's not her personality. I'm sure she didn't want that responsibility. And so she said, "Well, Kelly, what are you thinking?" And I said, "I really think that we need to do the full cranial." But I'm like, you know, the percentages that they're giving me are not really very good. Mm-hmm. And she said, I think you're right. You know, I think you need to go with that gut. And oh gosh. So that night they, you know, put him back to the room. I went to stay in a hotel by myself, and I was just a wreck. And so it was supposed to be scheduled that next morning. But that night when I was signing the paperwork, and they were telling me, you know, they were asking me, like, do you have steps going into your house? Do you have a ramp? Do you have a wheelchair? Do you have access to this? Do you have this? And I just remember looking at the lady and I said, why are you asking me these questions? And she said, "Honey, there's a really good chance that your husband is not going to walk out of this hospital." Whew. And I think that was just probably it was definitely the hardest decision that I've ever had to make for my family. Signing your name on that line, knowing or not knowing, I guess, what you were going to bring back to your kids. For your audience, we have 3 kids. They're 2, 4, and 10. And that was the scariest thing. Like, how am I going to tell my kids, that their dad's not going to walk out like he walked in? How am I going to do this? And it was, oh my gosh, it was so hard. So when you have this cranial surgery and they cut your skull all the way open and they go in there and they work on your brain, you're supposed to lose, a lot of your, your speech abilities, your everyday, walking, talking. I mean, everything, they will make you a vegetable, basically. Like, that's your percentages is going to that favor instead of the other direction. So, the surgery was scheduled for the next morning. It was supposed to be like a 6-hour surgery. And at 10 hours, they finally kicked me out of the waiting room. And I did not get to see him that night. So I go back to the hotel by myself again. And I'm a wreck because I don't know what's going on. I don't know why, it's taking them so much longer. Now, let me back up and say, speaking about good friends, rodeo people have a way of not taking no for an answer. Mm-hmm. So, my good friend in Mississippi called my good friend in Kentucky and was just like, hey, I can't be there for her, but she needs someone. Yeah. I don't care what you have to do. Find a way into that hospital and go be with her. So, my friend Risa calls me and she's like, I'm coming to St. Louis today. So you just figure out a way. How are we going to how are we going to do this? How are you going to sneak me in? And I'm like, I don't know, but we're going to sneak you in. And
Risa, the Chihuahua with a pit bull attitude. And I say that with love, Risa, because I love you, girl. But I want our listeners to know what we're talking about here. Like the cutest, daintiest thing. But yeah, I wouldn't want to make her mad.
No. Heck no. So, she picks me up. I was just like, let's just, they just took him back. Let's go get something to eat. Let's leave for just a minute because I knew we were going to be there for a long time, you know?
Yeah.
So we did that, and it was just, to see a familiar face was so, so nice, so relieving. And, so long story short, when we came back, she wasn't taking no for an answer, and she walked right on up in that waiting room, and, she sat there with me for hours. And so anyway, I finally, they're closing the waiting room, but you have to leave. I go back to the room and I'm there for a little bit, and I get a call from the surgeon, and he says, everything went fine. We ended up putting some clips in, and, you can see them in the morning. And so when he said clips, I was like, okay, well, that's strange because...
Wasn't it supposed to be one?
Yeah. Last night they just said we can, put a clip in.
Uh-huh.
And so I was just like, okay, it doesn't, whatever you had to do, that's fine. As long as you fixed him, that's fine. So basically my reassurance on if I had made the right decision for Luke or not with his surgeries came that day, the next day when I was asking them on the phone, they had told me clips. What exactly did that mean? Because in the beginning it was just going to be one clip. And so the surgeon explained that that's why the surgery took so long was because when they were in there, they had found another weak spot. And so they actually put multiple clips in instead of just one clip. So, I felt much better that I hope I made the right decision, because if they would have done the coils through the angiogram the night before, they would have never known that there was another weak spot and there was more problems that needed to be fixed. So that was kind of somewhat of my reassurance that whenever I signed those papers that I did make the right choice. So, of course, in the back of my mind, let's back up to January 3rd, the day before all of this happened. I felt like there was this nudge, and I couldn't quite shake it. I'm sitting in, Barnes Jewish Hospital, which is also connected to the Siteman Cancer Center on the far end, which is like blocks away, but they're all connected. And something just kept telling me, just go to the cancer center. Just walk over there and go. Like, what else do you have to do? You're sitting here in ICU for weeks. What else do you have to do? So, I mean, when I tell you, like, I am begging and pleading with God, like, please just take care of my husband. Just make sure that he's going to be okay. And I always... We have this funny relationship. We've just been together for so long. So whenever like something's wrong, like we sing songs and, we're kind of goofy. So I just remember like walking down this really long hallway. He was the very last room on the right. And I'm trying to be so strong because I don't know what I'm going to find whenever I turn that corner. And so, obviously that night they couldn't say like, he's talking or, he has feeling or movement. Like they couldn't tell me anything like that. So whenever I walked down there and I turned into the door, I just said, "Hey, good looking, what you got cooking?" And he started singing it back to me. And I was just like, oh my gosh, thank you. Like, so I knew that he was still there mentally. Yeah. Somewhat. Yeah. I mean, if you want to call that there mentally, I guess.
That is precious. I love that.
But, so, he was in a lot of pain. He spent weeks in ICU. And, throughout that time, I mean, there was just so many people that were reaching out. And I had not put any of this on Facebook yet. Like, I needed my family to deal with this.
Absolutely.
First,
yeah.
Before I made it super public. But the rodeo world is a very tight-knit world. And, just the amount of love and the prayers and, I mean, so many things. Like, I just felt at peace. Like, I could feel, people would send me scriptures and they would send me songs. And it just helped me through that very lonely time because, Luke slept a lot, and if he was up, he was in a lot of pain, and he, couldn't talk because if he talked, it like rattled his brain. So there was so much swelling in there that, he had a lot of stuff going on. So I tried to like push it off for a couple days, and finally I was just like, okay, I gotcha. Like, I hear you. I'll just go. Yep. I will go and see what I can do. Don't have a doctor over there. Don't have a referral over there. This is like state of the art. I mean, they're, I don't know, nationally ranked, cancer center. Yeah, I'm sure they're going to let someone just walk up in there.
Right.
And make an appointment off the street.
But
so,
you went.
But I went.
You went.
So as I'm trying to like, I don't know. I'm at a loss of words. Like, justify or, I'm trying to give all of these excuses of why it's not going to work because of this and it's not going to work because of that. But it was just like a push, So finally I'm like, fine, I'll just go. So I show up I follow the signs, go to this huge building, cancer center. So I follow the signs to the breast floor. So I walk up to the desk and there's these two reception ladies and I said, I know this is going to sound really crazy, but, back at my hometown, they wanted to do a biopsy and I'm currently over here with my husband. He's going to be in ICU for weeks. I was just wondering if there was any way that you could maybe do that biopsy here. And they said, I don't know. I mean, they pretty much looked at me like I was crazy. So they were like, let me go get, our manager. So this lady came out and her name's Pat And I mean, you want to talk about Bulldog Pat, she was on it. And so I tell her this whole story, you know, of what all has happened. And she's like, honey, can I just give you a hug? And I said, of course you can, you know? And, I mean, she was wonderful. So for days, you know, I told her where the imaging was done and stuff like that. And, hometown hospitals sometimes are not really easy to work with. So she would, you know, text me or call me and say, you know, I called 3 times. I sent 4 emails. I cannot get them to send your records. I cannot get them to send your images. You know, they're not working with us at all. And I said, of course they're not, because, you know, of course they're not. That doesn't surprise me. So long story short, Pat finally got me in there, and, they did another mammogram. They did an ultrasound. And the lady that did the ultrasound, nobody really had to tell me it was cancer. Like, it was just one of those, whenever she looked at me and she was like, Kelly, she's like, I really, you know, best of luck on your journey. She's like, you know, the way she looked at me and the way she said it, I was like, oh, this is not good. So they took quite a few biopsies, and it takes a while to get your results back. So I think we may have been home 2 days with Luke whenever I got the results back. And it was a rough couple days with Luke, you know, just transitioning from, he didn't want the lights on in the hospital room. He'd never had a TV turned on. So like dark and quiet is what he had been used to for all these weeks. And when you have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old little boy, dark and quiet is the farthest thing.
Well, and when they haven't seen their daddy in weeks. I mean, you know, that's, oh man.
So his head was just throbbing. He was in a lot of pain, and like, you know, couldn't get out of bed for most of the day. And of course, you know, they wanted to wrestle him, and like, they couldn't. And so anyway, whenever I got the phone call that it was breast cancer, I was just like, gosh, like, how are we going to do this? You know, because the surgeons had said, you know, that his headaches may never go away. Like, that might be something that he will deal with the rest of his life. And at that time, I'm sitting there and I'm like, he can't run his business. He can't make any money. What are we going to do? So, you know, it's just, God always provides. And even when you can't see it and you don't know it, he always does it. And some of our friends started planning a really big benefit barrel race. And gosh, I can't tell you like how grateful and how wonderful it was to see so many friends from so many different places, you know, from all over the country, that, you know, if they couldn't make it, they sent a card, or it was absolutely amazing to feel that love and that support. And your bottle of shaving cream, you know, that you sent me. And I'll be honest with you, like, I don't want to send any more shaving cream bottles.
I don't either.
But yeah, that's a really long story to why you sent me my shaving cream bottle. But that's it in a nutshell. My husband's doing good. And
I'm looking at him right now, getting to visit with my husband, and I love that. They're sitting on the porch, and we're sitting here, and God, what a blessing, you know, just to be getting to sit here and visit together.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, I completed chemo, getting ready for surgery. So, you know, there's still many hard days ahead, but it's it's going to be all right. And I think having a daughter, you know, whenever this first happened, I just want her to be able to look back and say, my mom went through that with grace. And so whenever I'm having a bad day, like, I try so hard not to hide it, but like, we'll talk about it, we'll touch on it, and then I'm like, let's go ride horses.
Yeah.
Let's go do something. Because you know what, like, we can't change this situation. We may not like it. It's not going to be easy. But let's go do something else that we both enjoy, because I don't want to sit here and worry about this.
Right.
Gosh, to hear your daughter tell you that she doesn't want a bald mom, like, that's a hard conversation to have.
You look really good bald, though.
Thanks.
You did. And you were so cool about it, too, how you did it. You were.
Thank you.
I mean, you and your dad and Luke had matching haircuts.
Yes, we did. And
your hair's coming back now, too.
It's coming back. It's coming back very gray. You know, chemo has pushed me postmenopausal, they say, which is wonderful. So, whatever.
It's the prettiest gray hair I've ever seen.
Gray hair's better than no hair. But, that was really hard. You know, kids don't like change.
Sure.
Nobody does.
Uh-uh.
But, that was hard for her. And to see your children, I'm not going to say suffer, because suffer emotionally, I guess, and mentally.
Right.
It was just hard, you know, and she was trying to find her way through that process. And gosh, I was still trying to find my way through that process. And, we didn't know, you know, how sick I would get with the chemo. And thank goodness, I mean, the Lord has been so good. And, you know, I've continued to ride, and me and her still rope together, and it's amazing. We just entered our first breakaway rope. Well, we were both entered in the breakaway roping together, at our first open rodeo just a couple weeks ago.
That is so cool. So cool.
Yes. I mean, it was awesome. Of course, I just have this colt that I'm, you know, getting ready to maturity, but being able to stand back there, you know, with her and know that both of us are on breakaway horses and we're going to go rope, like, it was just the best feeling.
Wow.
So, you know, getting back to the whole kid thing, I wanted to have them involved in it. And so we, you know, had my mom and dad come down, because they've helped us through so much. I mean, watching my kids for, you know, a month at a time.
Right.
I mean, who does that?
Right.
But thank God we have them, and they're such a blessing to us. So they came down to our arena, and I mean, it was still cold outside, but I wanted all of my kids to have like a turn at shaving my head, because it was thinning really bad, like coming out in the handfuls. And so I'm like, okay, how can we somehow make this a fun experience? Well, of course, my oldest daughter, she did not think it was very fun. But the boys...
Sure, 2 and 4?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You put some clippers in their hand and tell them to go shave mom's head? Like, how much fun was that? You know?
Yeah.
So then after they did it, they were like, especially the youngest one, he's like, I don't like your hair. And I'm like, well, you were the one that cut it for me. He's like, I'm so sorry. I don't like your hair. And I'm like,
oh, Case. Case.
There's a lot of good and bad memories that are made inside that arena.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I mean, it molded me growing up. So I know it's going to mold my children growing up.
Absolutely.
And so I just thought, okay, what better place but in the arena, you know, because this is where we spend most of our time, and that's kind of like my sanctuary. And,
Yeah.
you know, if I had days where I felt kind of yucky, like, that barn is where I would be, you know.
That's your church.
Yes.
I mean, it's...
Yes.
Yeah, back of a horse.
So anyway, that's...
Watch you and Luke and all of your kids and family walk through this, without a doubt. I mean, I can assure you, like, grace is the only word, you know, that comes to mind when I see, so. You know, how you walk through it and how you still continue, you know, to show up for other people. And, like you being here this weekend, you know, I feel like it's been so good for both of us. But,
oh gosh, yes.
You know, you had to send me another bottle of shaving, you know, you sent me a bottle of shaving cream, a few weeks ago when I lost my brother unexpectedly. And, again, it was, I'm tired of sending shaving cream.
Yes.
I hope we don't have to for a long, long time, but,
exactly.
You know, you showed up, you know, for me, and, just being here. And, when that's one of the greatest blessings, if not, I'll just be bold and say it is the greatest blessing that has ever come for me, slinging a leg over a horse, are the friendships that I've made.
Oh, definitely.
Without a doubt. You know, and it's not that one's more valuable, I feel like, than another. It's just that as you go through different seasons of life, you need different types of friends from different parts of your life, but you will have that core group of people that it doesn't matter what season you're in. You know, you can go 2 months or, you know, a year without really getting to talk, or you may go years without seeing each other in person.
Oh gosh, how many years have we went?
We went like, I bet it was 5.
Yeah,
I
think so.
I think it was 5 because y'all were at our wedding, and then we didn't see you in person until the barrel race.
Yeah,
and I mean it was a solid 5 years that we had not gotten to see each other in person, but it didn't matter. Like right. We hadn't missed a beat, you know. But it didn't make your heart hurt any less, or you know, not want to be there any less. I mean, it's just like, those are the friends that, you know, no matter what, like, there's a bond there. And again, I'm so grateful for that. And that's, you know, this whole podcast goes back to the cowgirl state of mind and having that. And I think that when you have the cowgirl state of mind, you're open to finding other women that don't just live that way, but like they believe in it and they put it out into the world. Yes. And like we need more of that, so that more relationships, because your relationship's a blessing to me and my family, and like getting to watch our kids play together and get to know each other.
Oh, it's amazing.
Oh man, we've been at a demo derby tonight. They've been to the splash pad. Kelly and all, I think all the adults are worn smooth out. We have packed so much fun into 2 days. Like, it's been a ball, but I just I'd love to hear in your words, Kelly. We'll wrap this up. You've shared so much with us tonight that I know that it's going to touch a lot of lives, them getting to hear your story. But what does the cowgirl, you know, state of mind, what does that phrase mean to you?
I don't know. I mean, I have always tried to be very tough, and not just, you know, on the tough outside, but a tough interior. Like, go get it. Like, it's gonna be, this is how I'm gonna do it. Mm-hmm. But then I also have always felt like, or I've always tried, I hope I did, you know, to bring people up with me, because it's not any fun to be at the top by yourself. You know what I mean? That's a very lonely place. And there's so many women, especially, I mean, we've got good men in our lives too, don't get me wrong, but there are so many women that I have been blessed with tremendously throughout my life. And I know that if I was to call any of them and say, I need you here now, they would drop everything. They would drop their families. You know what I mean? And like, they would come in a heartbeat. Mm-hmm. But if I just say, I need you to pray for me right now, mm-hmm. I know they're going to pray for me. And if they can't, physically be there, they're gonna find someone else to be there for them. I'm going off of.
No, you
of this
stay
whole
right
thing.
where you're at. You're good.
But I don't know. I just feel like it's so important to know who you surround yourself with, and the cowgirl state of mind when you're picking your traveling partners. Whew.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
You don't think that's that big of a deal, but that energy can be really negative and can bring you down in the arena, the performance rodeo arena, or the arena of life. Okay, whichever way you want to spin it. And it's the same way in the business world. It's the same way. Do you want to pretend like you're gonna be in this group and you want to go buy this and live in the fancy house and whatever? Like, is that what's going to make you happy, or is it going to be the real truth and like just that deep down soul? Like, I think once you find those friends with that deep down soul,
mm-hmm.
and that they're going to push you and you're going to push them through, and I'm not just talking about the rodeo arena, I'm talking about the arena of life. If I screw up, I want you to tell me, hey, you were kind of hateful to your husband. Like, I probably wouldn't have got away with that. Or,
right.
You know what I mean? Like, you might want to work on this area.
Yeah.
This is just an outsider looking in. Like,
I'm wrapping this in love.
Yes.
But
sometimes you have to hear that from people. And there's so many things that you can take from the rodeo arena to the arena of life. I'd say be careful who you pick as your friends, because that is what molds you.
Mm-hmm.
Before you pick a husband, before you have a family, your friends are always going to be there for you. Whether they see you or talk to you all the time, it doesn't matter. But those friends will always be there for you. And, we all go through seasons of life.
We do. And when you say that, it makes me think about Pastor Craig Groeschel. I really like to listen to him and his podcast, and he talks about, you're the sum of the 5 people you surround yourself with the most. And I feel like for me and you and many people listening to this, once you enter adult phase, and you have other commitments, many of us don't get to geographically be near, surround ourselves geographically or consistently, like, let's go grab dinner, or that's just not part of what we get to do. But we're so blessed that in the world we live in today with technology, I know a lot of people can say it's not a blessing, but it's a tool, and thank goodness we have it, because we can still surround ourselves with those friends that live hundreds of thousands of miles away with the click of a button.
Exactly.
I'm thinking of you text, or hopping on a video app or whatever, or just a plain old phone call, or some snail mail, or a bottle of shaving cream.
Exactly.
And just like really saying, hey girl, I'm thinking about you. I just want you to know, it doesn't even have to be more than that. I'm praying for you. And that right there is, that's got the cowgirl state of mind written all over it.
Exactly.
Well, I love you, Kelly.
I love you.
I'm so glad you shared your story. If people want to connect, or, just continue to follow along and through this next phase of your story, I know we're still continuing to pray. We need some prayer warriors.
Yes. Yes.
How can they follow along with you?
Well, I'm on Facebook. It's Lacey Kelley.
Yeah, Lacey Kelley. So, but she's the only Kelley I know.
Yes. Lacey was my maiden name. So, but yeah, shoot me a message, and please pray for me, because I have some of the best prayer warriors. But I'm always trying to recruit more. Who doesn't need more prayers?
That's right. Well, y'all, thank you so much for tuning into this episode. I really hope it blessed you as much as it blessed me getting to record it and sit down and visit with my friend. And if this could be an encouragement to somebody or multiple people that I just ask that you share it with them. So thank you so much, and God bless.
Thank you for spending your time with me on the Cowgirl Confessions podcast. I'm so glad y'all stopped by. If you could take a moment to share this episode and tag us on social media, I'd be happier than a cowgirl in a sea of buy one get one vintage turquoise. Subscribe to make sure you don't miss an episode. New episodes will be released bi-monthly. Please leave us a review if you feel so led by going to iTunes. Your feedback will really help us breed the idea of grabbing life by the horns with a cowgirl state of mind into women across the globe. Some that may have never even had the privilege to throw their leg over a horse, but could most certainly use the cowgirl state of mind while navigating life. Thanks again, y'all. Until next time, keep pursuing your dreams with that all go and no woe mentality. Remember, you're writing a story that's worth saddling up for, sister.